Welcome to Desk Session, Carl DeGregorio's Desk Session 73. Talk about not having shit for 73. Wow. Is that the year the Mets went to the World Series with Willie Mays and lost? I think it might be. That's my only grasp. And again, when I am flying by the seat of my pants and not fact-checking in real time and setting myself up for scrutiny in that regard. But that's the point of the desk session, is to sit down at the desk, literally, figuratively, creatively, and ramble and try to stay on topic or round it out and sort of make a impromptu essay on the fly in front of people. And, to get things off my chest, to give some progress, to talk about creative endeavors vis-a-vis what's going on week to week, but also the macro being trying to get my play produced some way, somehow. And I've had a good week vis-a-vis. Again, I tend to stick with the same exact phraseology for the entirety of each one, and it becomes the one I fixate on. I'm blanking on others that I've used, but it looks like vis-a-vis is going to be the the one this week. But I've had a good week in regards to, which I think is the translation of vis-a-vis, by the by, something like that. I've had a good week in terms of and in regards to some auditions, both self-submitted, which is the directive I take to not be passive. And it's not a big step, but it's a step a lot of actors have replicated and do even more, I'm sure, than I do. But self-submitting, and the combination of self-submitting, which is literally, I don't know what the return of exchange is, but a couple of those, two of those have come through, and one of them was also an actor friend referring me to a director. We had a little callback powwow. I don't think that's bearing fruit, or he's just sort of up in the air about things. A little less further along than maybe I thought he might be in terms of making the production happen. Casting should be is almost a casting is a pre-production endeavor. Or maybe not. I think it's actually more toward the production. And so when you are in production, you're casting. But if you're casting in pre-production, I think you're that's the cart before the horse. You're trying to get attached in the sort of world of studio pictures or greenlit pictures or financially backed already pictures. An actor can be attached in pre-production, makes them a producer in many cases, because the whole point of the actor's involvement is that's the hook for the rest of the budget, or that's the hook for the studio, or sometimes the actor has some skin in the game, but mostly it's their name and that they are trying to generate their own material and their own work, so they will be listed as a producer. And but when you're doing short films and trying to get it together, if you're at casting and you're not in production, it's a little cart before the horse. But I appreciate his hustle, and it was a good script, so we'll see. But and then some things came through vis-a-vis. I think last week it was trying to check my ums and my uhs, and now it's it's funny how the mind works when you are split focus, when you're thinking about what to say, when you're thinking about how to say it, and then you're just trying to stay in flow, and then you hear yourself judging yourself and things. So this would be, I guess, in an acting term, I would be in my head for hearing things that come out of my mouth vis-a-vis repetition and use of the same verbiage. But the and I think I'm even misusing it in the way I was using it just then. I was trying to say that my agent So 2 very promising auditions came via my agent and via proper sort of hunt and peck and the breakdown services and the whole former the original plan of being an actor for hire. It came through those means, and that's a good feeling. But none are more important than the other. Is kind of how if I'm gonna settle on a theme. And I guess what reinvigorates me as like an actor is, of these 2, one is probably less important in the pecking order of things, but is a better role. And that's when you kind of, at least, if I were talking to young actors or young people even just on the fence about acting, the idea would be one would pay better, one would be higher profile, but is not a significant role. And then a significant role in something less high profile. If you want to be an actor, you want the significant role. And that may be counter to what any agent would want to hear, or someone in a business school would say, because you would, et cetera, et cetera. But that's how your heart's in the acting and in the work, that you would rather forego and if in a perfect world, I get both, right? In a perfect world, I don't have to make that distinction. In a perfect world, eventually you graduate to only significant roles, and that's where working actors and then stars above working actors, that's where they're at. And then, of course, actors who are bona fide brands that can greenlight movies with their involvement, and then they become producers, right? The very interesting example of, I guess, Brad Pitt and I think Jennifer Aniston are still professionally linked, and Plan B, you'll see that a lot more often than he's in the film. So he's been able to really become a producer of note and a movie star on his own time, almost. It's like he's moonlighting as a bona fide producer, if you will. Anyway, this is kind of all inside baseball, but this is what I'm here to talk about. And I've been talking about technology previously. Last week I spoke about Hamnet being so powerful to me, and that craftspeople, molds and materials get better and tools get better. And so if you're doing a period piece in 2026, it can almost be, it will be better. It'll be easier to set design, set dress, and to costume. Every year gets better because materials get better. You can make, unless you're really going for the actual burlap or the actual wool of a costume, which I think is important under the scrutiny of a very high definition camera, but you can use nylons and stuff to make things appear to be wool, so that the actors aren't croaking on the set in the heat of Louisiana playing a rebel soldier. But I do think the reality is of doing it the exact same way of the day, so that the actors don't have to act. But in Hamnet, I think the Old Globe exists in some museum form, but in the interiors and being able to light it and shoot it, I think they had to do some set building. And so technology is always going to be a friend to the artist in the execution of the artistic vision. And then what's happening and what's happened in our industry is and I've spoken about the triumph, for me at least, of the self-tape being being not an advantage, but a chance to make a short film, almost, to be part of the filmmaking process with your auditions, as opposed to back in the day, the psychology of sitting in a waiting room with 15 other brown-haired, similar-age dudes, and that signing in and finding parking and, going against traffic on a Friday afternoon. All that stuff has been taken out of the audition process. And it's not a lament. Nobody can really enjoy that. And then of course nerves, and usually getting one crack at it. I mean, you can't even, I may have mentioned this before, but like having an audition on the Fox lot, and they don't want you to park where the executives and the employees park. They have and they tell you, get there, give yourself time to get to the bungalow on the lot, and you're like, yeah. And I gave myself an hour or more, and I parked in the wrong place. And it's like the hike you have to make, and to be frazzled and barely on time, or maybe even 5-10 minutes late, sweating in the stupid costume idea. Not a costume, but you're wearing some kind of clothes you wouldn't be wearing that day to play a security guard or some shit or whatever it might have been. And you get there late, and you're huffing and puffing, and you're apoplectically apologizing because your theatrical background, your drama school ethics, you're like, I can't believe I'm even late for this thing, and how dare I? And then you're pounding on yourself emotionally for being late, you heeded the advice, or you're blaming traffic, and all this swirl is going into then, okay, Carl, we're ready for it. And you're like, fuck. And you got to go in there and play it cool, man. And it's a disaster. It's a disaster. And so that was the way they used to do it. And, how many times have you heard on the red carpet all these incredible actors saying I was bad at auditioning? So I don't know how they figured that out. I understand how that is true. And I'm not even saying I was bad at auditioning. I was saying that it's an impossible situation in any circumstance for you to, And the funny thing is, a lot of the work I've done personally and emotionally to mitigate nerves and regulate nervous system, and I stopped doing stand-up, and we don't go in person anymore. So, and boy, I think a lot of what held me back was my psychology, to be honest, and my inability to, break from troubling thought patterns and these high-pressure situations. And now I don't put myself in those vortexes anymore, and I would be curious to see. But things can rear their head even with a self-tape. So with the advent of a self-tape, you have your own camera, your own lights, your own backdrop. You're basically auditioning, and they've outsourced that. And then here's how economics plays on everything, right? I go to not seminars, but alumni things when a prominent alumnus will be speaking, or some casting director who has had a history of enjoying casting people from my university will, and it's basically just a way to have an alumni association and have that tendril of keeping in touch with your alma mater. I've gone to a few of them, and one casting director, he just broke it down. It's like, to cast a long-running, hour-long drama, you need these casting offices, and it's a suite, it's a floor, it's a rental that they no longer have to do, or they can just do one, or they can all work from home. And so economics is basically, so why rent this space when you can have them audition? And so it's always that, it's essentially, and this is a hackneyed thing, but self-tape is essentially self-checkout but for a very specific niche or niche, whichever one you want to pick, for a segment. Unfortunately, self-checkout is more vexing, but it's the same thing. It's not that it's taking a job away, which it definitely is. It's then passing on the labor to the customer. And it's what is very frustrating at a supermarket is that you can't, you don't want to self-checkout. And back in the day, what happens is with self-taping, now you have to, I have to set up and break it down every time I do it. And if I leave the stuff up, I'm tripping over C-clamps and C-stands and the legs of a tripod, and I can't leave the backdrop up because it's huge and it blocks access to the rest of the apartment. All these things. And it's all for this sort of illusion of that I have a black or a blue or a gray wall behind me because I have the room to paint a separate, wall for self-taping, and I have a studio. But they don't need to know any of that, right? I've even mitigated exposing the fact that I'm not in a separate taping studio for there's a very vexing thing they ask for, which is the full body slate. Which I don't know if it's different. I think angles are what they are, so I don't think my height has anything to do with it. But I'm 6'2", and when you pull back to try to get me in a full body, which I can't even do with my iPhone at this point, maybe you can on the new ones, but you can't get a full body slate without breaking the illusion. And then there's like a laundry basket in your audition, and that's a little bit more of a exposure to my life that I want to make. I think there's a laundry basket in this shot. But the point is, I don't want the casting people to see that, to break the illusion of that. And I am old enough to have been, auditioning in the waiting rooms, in their spaces, so that everything's going to look the same because it's their video camera. So they're just going to, I'm not breaking the spell with a erroneous audition tape. And so it's now incumbent what I did to mitigate the fact that, and I may have to do it again because either I'm gained weight or lost weight, or I'm older or I'm younger. I had access to a real casting studio where these in-person auditions used to happen with more frequency, but it's all set up. I have a friend who I asked if I could go in there and just shoot a bunch of full body slates, and he could pull back on the camera because they have, real broadcast quality cameras, so he could pull all the way back and get me from head to toe. And what I do is I just stick that at the end, and that has to suffice. And I think it's just, to get the body type. And as ineffectual as some of these mandates in our union are, I vaguely remember that new rules for self-tapes were implemented and part of what was negotiated in the strike, and they need to stop asking for the full body slate, and they're still asking, and people are still vexed by it. And this is inside baseball, which may have hit the space bar for half of you out there, but this is the kind of thing that is the journey, let's say, because I was going to use a different word, and I'm going to go out on a limb today and say that I'm feeling optimistic that things are toppling in a very good way, and I'm feeling good. I'm not humble bragging at all. I'd much rather have bookings, and I'd much rather have my, support gig worked out. But I'm not humble bragging. But it's January. It's late January, third week of January, when everybody wants to hit the ground running. And boy, have I, gratitudinally, if that's a word. I say with gratitude, not with braggadocio, but I have had, I think we're pushing towards 6 or 7 auditions, and they've run the gamut of voiceover, short films, features, and things like that. So, and I'm sure, I'm not trying to be comparative, but I know that in my laments when I was on the outside looking in, I was asking for this exact thing. And so, and I don't know, this logic may not be correct, but I think to be a working actor, you first have to be an auditioning actor. And so this is part of the journey, and I'm saying it with gratitude, not with vexation, you know what I mean? And I'm also just, trying to cognitively put that out there, and I am noticing when things will rear their head, when critical thinking is a good thing for, I guess, academics and for people who want to weigh in on shit, and I guess so that you don't stick your finger in a socket. They say we don't teach critical thinking. I don't, maybe I wasn't either. I don't know. And I don't know that I practice it. I know that the way I have a critical mind has hampered me. So, to the degree that this may be unfascinating or non-interesting or, what might have you is, I put a lot of pressure on these recent ones, and I may be doing it all ass wrong. I don't know. I think there are no rules and there are rules. I think, so with the self-tape, the self-checkout, maybe people work out systems. I have to work out systems, but where the sort of negativity can work in is, and this goes back to the original premise of technology and also framing things in a more positive way. What an incredible thing it is to even be talking to you with my own abilities, limited as they may be, to produce. I am producing. I have joined the world, and that's how I will tell you a bartending story that isn't of much. Nothing insane happened, but people have sat in front of me for years, and I've had a million, I'm probably pushing hundreds of thousands of conversations, both interactive and also overheard. And sometimes you wonder, how do I wish I could put my earbuds in at work, because I don't want to hear this fucking insidious or insipid or daft conversation, but I can't get away because I'm trapped behind a fucking cage of a survival restaurant job. But other times you'll be in an incredible conversation and it'll change your life. Other times you'll meet a director who casts you in a feature film with Ray Liotta. Like, things like that have happened, and I have to remember that. But it's that there was an overheard conversation, and names are either unknown, identities are not verifiable, and I also want to be kind and also not set up stories, and I don't know this dude. I'll just say that you have regulars that you enjoy seeing every day, and there are regulars you like so much that if you are lucky, there's regulars I've liked so much that I've texted them, hey, why don't you come in tonight? It's dead. Or, we got so many jerk-offs at the bar, we need to balance it out. That was my favorite thing to say when a friend or a guest I liked was sitting at the bar, and they're like, we're going to get out of here just so you can get these chairs back. And it's like, financially, I understand that that's what the restaurant wants. They want to turn and burn these bar stools. But I would say to them, look, don't, just chill out, because the minute you leave, 2 seats become available, and you don't know what the slot machine of life is going to put in these stools in your absence, and it could go south quickly. So I've had that happen. But let's just say this was not one of my favorite. And then there's this phenomenon of a semi-regular or a quasi-regular, or it's not a phenomenon. If I've been in one bar for many, 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 many years, I've seen everybody who's come once every 3 years. I've seen them, if that's what it is. So I'm trying to be equanimable. Is that what it is? Even-handed. All right, let's go with that. This fella would come in on a semi-regular basis, and he was not... The problem with a semi-regular person who's a pain in the ass is like, dog, this could go so much smoother if you would acknowledge you've been here before. I acknowledge we know each other. Your quirks could be worked out in a shorthand, but you refuse, and you want to have this weird drama play out that it's like, I need to deal with you. And let's say this guy was a hair plug type of dude. It wasn't fully worked out. He was a guy on the phone. And the thing is, I've been in the business long enough that you weren't always eavesdropping on someone else's phone calls. So, but this guy was an odd dude. And I guess, he had means to some degree, or at least perpetrated that he had means. All of this to say that I'd never seen him with somebody. He was always on a phone call. And I'm only being faithful to my memory. So it's not like I have to make this up, and I may be wrong about it, but let's just say he's the type that sometimes there's a guy who'll come in and get a baked potato, and it's like the baked potato order of the century, and you're like, all right, I don't, I love a baked potato, and that's a valid order at a bar if you just want to nibble, but like, let's not make it the fucking the meal at a fucking state dinner, and it's, he had these quirks and these maybe multiple, like, I'm just sort of hybridizing the types that, let me try some wine, and it's always going to be the one from Argentina, which is cheaper, but he's going to taste the other one, say, I really like this one, and it's without fail, he's going to go for the cheap one. There's all these predictable patterns of human behavior that you ascertain from years of having to go this route. And he was on the phone talking to a friend, so to cut short the sort of backdrop, and maybe an overcoat, a little flamboyancy, maybe fingerless gloves, just oddball guy. And he would talk on the phone. And I remember one night his phone call, and I try not to eavesdrop, but my eyes are shot with age, but my ears, knock on wood, still work like my girlfriend calls me a bat, like I hear like a bat, homing pigeon or whatever, but I use sonar. But the conversation got to where he was talking to his friend about, like, there's a whole big world out there. And this maybe, 10 years, 15 years ago. And he was saying, he was giving this advice to a friend. I don't like the guy. I don't like that he's in my presence. I don't like at that point, I was very hard on myself, maybe still am, still always will be. I'm working on it, but I was mad at myself for having to share oxygen with this fucking guy. But what he was saying to his friend, and his care and his concern for his friend, was like, you got to get off the couch. You have to. There is a world out there where people are becoming known for videos that they can self-publish on YouTube. You can, if you're creative, you can make films on phones. And maybe this was a little bit at the cusp of where it was coming, but like, we've been living with it for 15 years or at least, right? So he was basically admonishing and encouraging a friend to say, like, we don't have, get on with it. Get your ass in gear. Be thrilled, not stressed about what's kind of coming or what is available to you. And so, a good friend of mine, he's from Trinidad, and I don't know if these are all his grandmother's sayings or if there's like Trinidadian folk wisdom, but the lesson he taught me is, if you're hungry and the devil gives you a sandwich, that sandwich came from God, right? And so I put that on a lot of things in my life, and a lot of these conversations overheard, not intended for me, and said by someone, the messenger being like a vexing person, but that message is not a bad message. And so hearing that, and I've been a very earnest, and I've put on a comedy show for 10 years, and I don't know how I fight the urge to bash myself for inactivity. And if I really am honest, I've really grinded and put myself out there thousands of times. So he wasn't talking to me but even still, that advice he was giving to his inert friend spoke to me as, yeah, he's right. I need to get out there. And maybe it's because when I was at work at the time, I was, beating on myself because there was a night I wasn't working for myself. It was a night I was punching the clock, on somebody else's time. That's a very confining feeling for some of us, or for all of us, really. Or for the artist, or whatever you might have. And so, and we could all, quote unquote, do more, right? So I mentioned that as how I have to remind myself that the self-tape and the ability to do the desk session, the ability to do videos on Instagram, to have published a book, these things. And then you do have to always keep in the back burner, but on the front burner because of conditioning of the generation I come from. You always want to keep making sure you're getting cracks at the bat with casting directors, and your agent still knows you're alive. And so these things, they're basically plates in the air for the artist, for the actor, for the performing artist, right? So we're self-taping. I have to do 2 that are due. This one was due hard deadline that had to be accomplished the day of. Not because because I had short notice, which is another thing they're not supposed to do vis-a-vis the SAG agreements. And this is where we're at. It's maybe the counterproductivity of having these union rules, but then when it's an oversaturated, desperate workforce that would do anything for an opportunity, if they give you 18 hours to learn 4 pages and it's due in less time than the union says is appropriate, it means that they went through the proper channels, probably on the first call, and they were unsatisfied, and your agent was able to sneak you in as long as you were willing to play ball on short notice. And so every actor is going to accept those terms until they can push back. And it's a day that we all look forward to, that we can push back. But rather than be pissed off that I can't push back, that I have to accept these terms, that I have to audition for a character that is a job description, not a name, those kind of indignities, until that changes, I have to embrace. And I may be breaking the quote unquote rules of just throw it away. If it's a small part, don't ham it up. You don't want to, you're not going to distract from the lead characters, your furniture, right? It wouldn't break my heart to not get it. The chances are I won't, but I'm not going to play furniture, right? I didn't sacrifice all those nights sitting in front of some jerk off ordering a baked fucking potato like it was Chateaubriand. I'm not going to audition for, I'm going to audition. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to audition for Furniture Man, but I'm not going to present it as such. And so the rule of just throw it away, just send the tape in, I'm still going to try to make a human being. And the self-tape gives me that opportunity, which the in-person did not. Because the in-person couldn't, for example, I cannot give you the details, but you wouldn't bring a LaCroix into an in-person audition. You might either leave it in the waiting room, or you might bring it in, but you're not, or maybe you would. Maybe the really confident actors would bring it in and make it part of the scene. But if you're auditioning for, let's say, a behind-the-scenes movie set type of thing, everybody's around craft services. Everybody at craft services, which is like a snack table, if you don't know what craft services is, you get your meals, and you get, sometimes if it's a really good production, you get an omelet bar. It's the best, right? But craft services is literally like a table, one of those tables that the wrestlers fly through, one of those long-ass tables. And it's got fucking M&Ms and donuts and just the pens, right? Crudité, higher end. But there's also a big ass cooler with sodas. And back in the day when I drank Diet Coke, I was happier and shit that I could crush Diet Coke all day from craft services. And so and then now people are all on LaCroix. So if you're doing your own self-tape where you wouldn't in person, but you can do a bit of action where you're walking across the set and somebody's talking to you and you're like, or you just let it come into frame like this, it's not a product placement. It's just saying that that's on-set behavior that we all know, that everybody's walking. A Cliff Bar would be a good one. And you wouldn't eat a Cliff Bar or have a Cliff Bar or whatever. You just wouldn't do a lot of this stuff in person. And a lot of casting people that you see online will tell you, don't do props, don't eat, don't take a pull of anything. Just present the scene. And that might be right too. But all I'm saying is, for me, with all these things I got to do to set up cameras and all the things I got to do to figure out how to do the lights, which I still haven't figured out, and all of these things, that the old paradigm of I'm just an actor, I'm not a tradesman, I am not below the line, I am talent, I am not going to learn these things, and all of that lamenting about that is, okay, well, you're going to take away me being a spoiled actor who can just show up and read the lines with the casting director in person. If you're going to take that away and you're going to do the self-checkout bullshit with me, I'm going to, I'm going to indulge myself and I'm going to make a fun time of it. And so a clipboard, and rather than ever have, the other thing is now the onus on a self-tape is know your lines, which I think I was always knowing my lines in person, but in person, you'd kind of keep them in your hand and never look at them to kind of show that I know this shit tight. But when you're shooting something, the pages look really fucked. And now the pressure, which is another thing Zach says you don't have to memorize, but now you would look like a jackass who didn't try if you don't know your lines and you're shooting a self-tape. So, but if your character's a construction worker or a foreman, he's got a goddamn clipboard and your lines are on the clipboard. You know what I mean? And most of the time they're there as a security blanket in case you go up on your lines, right? But all of these things you wouldn't do in person. You wouldn't bring a clipboard to an audition and then, And so, again, I may be breaking all the rules, but I also know a lot of people say if you can pull it off, use a prop, just don't make it the scene. And also, if you're good, the prop ain't going to kill you. I have a buddy who booked Narcos and chewed gum, and he swears up and down that that idea of chewing gum and that got him the job, because when you're chewing gum, you're kind of an asshole, or you're kind of cocky, or you're stressed out and you're just trying not to grind your teeth, so you chew gum, or your breath is kicking because you've been doing overtime and you got empty stomach coffee breath just kicking and you need gum or something, or you're quitting smoking and it's Nicorette, and it gives you all these things that a character may have. And maybe at some point in some seminar they would tell you never chew gum, and all these nevers and all these, and just even from a academic standpoint, I passed re-upped on my real estate license, and I wish I'd have known this during the SATs, but always and never are the two questions I'd have to go back into it, but always and never, if you see those in the answers, one is, I think you can eliminate them, or they are one of those two. Like, you know what I'm saying? So you have to be careful with all that. And if you're going to pay a studio, or if you're going to have a friend take time out of your day, and one of these, I had 6 pages on one of them, so they're real scenes, they're 3-minute takes, and one thing goes wrong, so where I'm going with this is how the fuck do you stay grateful and excited about the opportunity? I had an acting coach, and he liked to change the vocabulary. And I understand why, but I would always push back about real world ramifications of being understood. So some of these terms, yes, they may be incorrect, or they may be self-defeating, but for example, I won't get into all of them. There are several of them, but an opportunity is what an audition is. Correct. 100%. And I'm using that terminology now, and as I think about them, and but it would get to the point where people from acting class would call on the phone and say, hey, I have an opportunity. Can you help me with it? And I'm like thinking, is it an opportunity for me? Or is it Amway? Or is it Herbalife? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then it dawned on me, oh, they're following the precept of don't call it an audition, call it an opportunity. Valid, but just confusing. And so there was a lot of those trying to change language to be more empowering. Great, but so these self-tapes, they're not even like, it would be like saying self-digital, self-digitized media, self-PDF. It's a tape, right? We were calling it tapes, audition tapes. Even on Twitter or X or any hashtag, they're going to be like, watch these audition tapes of, and they were digitally recorded. So we play with language. It's a fun thing to joke about and talk about. But if I am getting the opportunity, then I'm going to do it kind of my way. I will give you an example. These things are all cast and I think I don't have NDAs on things that are already came and went, but I read for the offer. I was so excited to read for this Paramount series about the making of The Godfather. You couldn't have been more excited about this. I was running around town trying to try to find a turtleneck in Los Angeles in July, okay? Or in any time. Where do people get fucking, you learn fast, like turtlenecks aren't a fucking thing anymore, you know what I mean? And yet they are, but the idea was I was reading for a mob cat outside of The Godfather was a 40s set piece, but the miniseries was about the making of The Godfather, so I wanted to be a 70s guy with the fucking turtleneck under the blazer kind of gangster, and so I had to do that, and I didn't get the part, but I did get asked to read for a different part. And the audition was to audition for, how do you audition for no lines? The part had no line. The second auditions, the ones they asked me to read for another time. How do you audition for something with no lines, but it's got business? And I was like a property master. And it was all these famous scenes in The Godfather. They were showing you the behind the scenes. So when Michael goes into the bathroom and Tessio, played by Abe Vigoda, when Tessio tells him, "Oh, that's a great place. They have those old-fashioned toilets with the chain. I can put the gun up behind there, right?" That scene was what the property master was placing the gun. And then the famous part of the story, if you watch the show and if you've read the book, Leave the Cannoli, I think is the Take the Gun, Leave the Cannoli. Part of the lore of that is that Coppola was really wanted vivid performances and knew he would get them from a great actor like Al Pacino if he could get them to react. So the plan was all put in place. He tells the property guy to put the gun in a different place than he told Al, like basically on the other side. So when Michael goes in to find the gun, it ain't where the fuck he thinks it is, and he's fucked. And you see him panicking, and then he stays with it, and he finds it on the other side. So that was the scene to audition for. And then the next scene was that Coppola said, we need more blood for the horse head in The Godfather. I was auditioning for, and I didn't get this part either. I made a meal out of this audition, because how do you audition for that? I had to come up with the thing. I basically did like POV. I'm taping the fucking gun. I have no lines, so they want to see me place the gun. But I'm not just doing that. And I taped the gun under, and I said Al's going to lose his mind on this. I added some bits just to give it some life. And then with the bloody horse, I had rubber gloves, latex gloves, and I was shaking my gym water bottles. I was shaking them over this. I was just trying to create some business and give myself something, quote unquote, to play. Right? You have to have something to play. You can't just stand there. And so that's an example of a self-tape that. And this is a lot of thought and a lot goes into it to not get it. It's not that it's discouraging. It's just that, eventually, this is why I'm excited. It's going to pay off. But when it comes to finding help with, my girls help me. She's a brilliant person. She's a incredible person. She's talented and articulate. And yet when she's helped me with self-tapes, but when I have my preferred choice of person to help, it's a whole different set, quote unquote, set of skills. And so throughout this whole process of years of being frustrated and being angry at myself, and then self-denigrating and self-critical and doing that actor thing, especially ones who haven't, quote unquote, made it yet, that self-deprecating shit, it's like I do have skills, because the minute you need somebody to help you with 6 pages, You need another good actor. And you find out, not that my girl's not a good actor, it's just that she's in real estate. So it wouldn't be an expectation, right? And what you have, the talent gap or the skill gap to bridge is it would be like trying to hang drywall with someone who's never picked up a hammer. That's all it is. I'm not giving it any mystical quality. But it was very affirming to me to be that beholden to my one scene partner that I needed for my opportunity. It was much appreciated because it was proof that it had to be someone who could keep the ball in the air. And I had a great time with these. And there was flaws in the lines and the logic, it's a period piece. It's a period piece. I have an old 80s phone, Again, this may be what they don't recommend, But I had it, and I could do this because you can't do this with an iPhone. And in the idea of taking an order down with the phone, and it's one of those 80s clamshell phones. It's funny, and do I put the cord and do business with that? No, I don't. So, it's sort of like lip syncing when you would see someone on American Bandstand, their fucking guitars aren't even, there's no amps, We'll give it up a little bit for the necessity of the moment. You know what I'm saying? So, but where the snafu comes is when business and obsolescence goes and technology and digital storage is a thing. And what was happening this week was the storage on my iPhone was full and I was losing takes. Because I had to delete things on the fly, and I probably deleted things I didn't need to, but I was desperate to make space, and I was working alone. Sometimes you have someone on FaceTime, which is an amazing option. I can help you with your audition. I just can't get to you in person, so we do it on FaceTime. So you're blessed, and this is what I'm saying. It's such a bargain, It's such a there are just modern problems, right? So I'm pissed off, but I'm still on my buddy's helping me, and I'm on the laptop via not vis-a-vis, but via FaceTime. So we're having a conversation in real time, and my shit's falling apart. My iPhone's on storage. The phone is sideways, so I'm like bent, and whatever my space constraints. It's like a total clusterfuck. And with that, you're supposed to then. And he makes the great suggestion. Just do you have an iPod? iPad, yes. Okay, we'll shoot it on the iPad. And all this stuff is happening for roles we don't get. And rather than be upset with myself, it's like to be able to perform under that kind of strain is a great. It's a great. What's the word? It's a great training ground for on-set life. You know what I mean? Shit's gonna go wrong on set, and the actor is gonna have to wait for a fucking battery change, for a SIM card change, a memory card change, or a mag change, a light change. A light's gonna fry out, and the gaffer's gonna be, fuck, we got to do that, and you're cooking with gas, and none of that fucking footage is usable because of something that went wrong, and your well is gonna go dry, and that happens and that's happening to me in an audition, in an opportunity, and it. To rise above it or not, I mean, maybe I didn't. Maybe I boofed that audition because they could tell there's something off with this guy because I'm pissed because I'm, but that's where I was talking about cognitively. The negative cycles were starting to puncture my blissful state of I have an opportunity here. You know what I mean? I was starting to say, certain actors don't have to go through this. They don't have to suffer like this. If I had this, that, or the other, I wouldn't be going through this. Why the fuck? I don't want to buy a phone. Why is it? I think it's a fucking con job. I think they're slowing down my data, so I buy a new phone. I mean, all this shit. And you're just trying to say some lines with some pep in your step, and you're trying to. You should be just working about like, are you gonna be like holding the soda? Like all the fun stuff is just out the window because of the technology backfiring on you. But isn't that the way it goes, right? And I hate that I have to learn these lessons even still, or at least be reminded, because you would think we would have it sewn up by now, you know. And then there's a deadline because now you have to upload it. So now not only are you the auditioner and the casting director, at least you're the casting assistant because you're not going to make the choice, but you have to set up the parameters for your audition. So you're the casting associate. And then when you're done and you're looking at the clock after your phone fritzed out on you and after you fucking bombing take after take after take and your friend's like, I gotta go, or whatever it might be, you have a deadline because it needs to be in there at the end of the day. And then you gotta upload the fucking, so now you're the courier. You know what I'm saying? You're literally the bike messenger. You're Kevin Bacon in fucking Quicksilver, but you're doing it digitally. But so you're doing all these things, and it never shall it go the other direction. We understand that, but I'm saying that, and where the people who have the hardest time, I've heard from my photographer, he's a big name photographer, he sees all these working actors who need, you know, editorial shots, and he's like, they're the ones who hate, the established actor hates the self-tape more than anybody, because they used to get a fucking coconut water and walked into the office and they got parking, and the casting director was thrilled to see them because they're a name actor, and this one might not be for you, but I wanted to bring you in. And it's like this whole thing, and they don't want to fucking set up, and they're the ones on the SAG committees pushing back for all these rules, and they're all because they're from this thing, I'm just an actor. And so I think maybe in this long-winded tale, I am feeling in a way, I was about to put a proviso on it, so I'm going to stop that. I'm feeling empowered by the circumstances I've been placed in that have forced me to forge myself in fire as far as dealing with so many things that I think will ultimately make me a better actor and better prepared for set behavior. And if I could only kind of learn this without the histrionics of frustration and out loud ranting about it, and just being a little kinder to the people in the room with me and myself, and not be so hard and not have these road rage incidences, because you wouldn't dare do them in person, and you wouldn't do them on set. You would be such an ideal soldier for the production. If things went south, you would be a teddy bear. So I have to give myself that grace, and also remember that the shit's always going to go wrong, and you know, and the nihilism that kicks in all of us, or I can only speak for myself, nihilism that kicks in is like, this is all for naught anyway, and then that's a non-starter. And at very least, keep your side of the street clean and send these better tapes, even though they're fucking PDF, they're MOV files or QuickTime files. And remember that these are opportunities, and no one's doing anything bad to me. They're actually looking for me and giving me an opportunity, and yet why would I be frustrated? It's one thing to be mad at corporate America for the self-checkout and being mad that I now have. It's not going to work for me. I'm not rabble-rousing when I'm mad. Why would I can't be mad at a casting director. This is the standard operating procedure of the industry. This is what you got to send me, you know? And now even working actors have to tape, and they have to tape on their own, and they're flush, or they haven't worked all this shit out, and they'll go to a studio, and it's $50 an hour to audition. And all I'm saying is, this is all the stuff that's happening before people put a bag of microwave popcorn in and fire up Netflix and stare at that stuff. This is all happening, and every part, except for the named people, every part has a version of this story, a version of this plight, but to change the word, because I'm just saying plight for wrapping this up, I'm saying has a version of this endeavor for these opportunities, these very limited opportunities in this industry. So it becomes a big holistic kind of quagmire, but also I don't know how much, I have to believe that changing attitude, changing my problem solving, changing my resilience, or bolstering all these things will get me to not be, it will show up on the tape. And also how I interact with my agent, how fast I reply, how quickly I am off book and studied and know my lines, and none of this stuff. This is the business of being an actor, and I'm going to take it and say that's been my business for all these years. And I've had opportunities that actually panned out to jobs, but you know, call it what you will. It's and now as I talk about it, I actually wound up having a good time. And so now, how can I snowball that? So when these opportunities come in, it's gotta have an energy of its own. I can't wait. Not please, I want to be considered. It's now I can't wait, because I know that there is such a thing as an opportunity in front of us. And so, and I don't know where that all lays out when I fight the fears of AI encroachment and stuff, but let's just keep it on the up foot and on the good foot. And I don't know. And as I sit here, I'm also thinking about how I lay this out week to week, and I got to wrap it up because I've literally had the game on over the top of the computer, and I missed out all the drama, because I will have to make my deadlines, whether there's games on or not, right? But I don't know. I can't do anything about the AI, and I think we're going to hopefully find our way, and let's do it in the new year. I know it's I've totally lost my mojo because I just saw the game. It's so funny. You can live your it's hard to live your ideals and your postures, but anyway, I'm gonna watch the second game because I got this done, and I would have done this yesterday if I didn't have those opportunities, those auditions that were due. And so we are capable. I am capable. You are capable. And let's stay in our capabilities, not in our limits and our liabilities. And I hope I was not too rambunctious on my laments during the struggles with my technology and my lights and things. And I have to remember the opportunity, and I have to remember the good graces of people who have been helpful to me on my journey, even if they are some jerk off with a baked potato or sipping 4 glasses of wine, constantly ringing on his phone. So I got to remember that if it's me, just like Taylor Swift says, it's me, I'm the problem, and I am going to fix it. So that's 73, Death Session 73. I don't know if I got anything clippable, and that was the thought that escaped me when I checked out the game. I am trying to do 2 clips a week to feed into social media to get more videos up, and it makes me scour these tapes over the week and watch myself, which is painful, but I don't know if I was quippy enough or speaking universal truths enough to find 19 seconds or whatever to clip. But I say that every week, and inevitably I dig something out. And even if it's out of context, I might be able to find something. So that's the second process to putting this up. It's not just that. And so I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to start respecting these skills and, the efforts that I make. And I think that's going to pay off. So anyway, have a good week, and I'll talk to you later. Carl D, Death Session 73. Peace.